I have the most petty brother and sister-in-law that you might have ever heard of. So when I decide to sell the family cabin and they absolutely erupt at me, I just do this to them, and then they understand I mean business. There was a promise I made to my father before he passed away, and that was that my brother and I would not sell our family cabin. We told him that we would take our kids and their kids there every summer, that we would fix it up if it fell apart, but we would never sell it. He said that if for any reason we had to sell it, it had to be worth it. I think being short of money for my daughter's college fee is a reasonable excuse, but my brother and sister-in-law feel as if they're selling the cabin's unethical. It's funny that they're acting holier than thou when they're the reason that I'm even in this mess in the first place. Let me start from the beginning because this is the messy one. With my brother's inability to be financially stable, I gave my sister-in-law advice when they got married that she should never leave him in charge of the bills or large sums of money. Jonah cannot help himself. He spends much more money than he can afford and makes useless gambles. I grew up with him and bailed him out enough times when we were growing up. I was happy that he was getting married, but feared that his spending habits would affect his relationship and any family that he chose to have in the future. It's either my advice fell on deaf ears or he managed to emotionally blackmail her. But even I was left wondering what sort of Jedi mind trick he did on her to even end up canceling their life insurance and car insurance. I've been helping my brother out with financial advice since we both started working. I've always told him that the last thing you should cancel when you need money is life insurance. We live in dangerous times, accidents happen, people's health fall every single day. They also have kids, and their son could decide to try out skateboarding and hurt himself. Sorry, I sound like I'm all doom and gloom, but I'm all, quote, hope for the best but never forget to prepare for the worst. I saw my brother nearly every day of the week. When he started to feel ill, I told him to go to the hospital for a checkup, but he told me of some remedies that Irene was making for him so that he could recover quickly. But when his fever, chills, and abdominal pain simply didn't stop, I knew something was seriously wrong. Several days later, I got a call from Irene, telling me that my brother was in grave danger and needed to have his appendix operated on now. Not only that, but since they've canceled their insurance, they would have to pay for it out of pocket. They didn't have the money. It was costing an arm and a leg, and he was in critical condition. I was scared. My brother's one of the only family members I have left that are still alive. The distant relatives that I have, I've not seen for several years. I was actually terrified. I didn't want anything to happen to him, and I asked them if they had any money to pay for the surgery. They told me that they fell on hard times, so they canceled insurance of all things. I told them they should have told me if they needed anything instead of canceling the insurance. My sister-in-law then told me that she had let go of the reins of the purse and he had decided to bet on horses to make quick money, and as you might have guessed, he lost. I was annoyed at no end. It would start like this, and then the next thing they knew, they would have no house. Since they didn't have any money and it was impossible for them to get a loan, they asked if I could pay for the surgery. There was one problem. I had the money, but it was for my daughter's college. Jasmine was a junior at the time, so I thought by the time she finished high school, I would have gotten the money back, and it was just money compared to my brother's life. He might have annoyed me, but we were still very close. I saw devastation in his wife and child were. I would not have been able to live with myself if I have not done all I could so to see he had a fighting chance. So without telling my wife, I emptied out the college fund and borrowed the rest. In less than 24 hours, my brother had a successful surgery and was now in recovery. I was so thankful that he was alive, and all the anger I felt towards him for not taking his health seriously when I told him to get checked out just evaporated. I didn't ask for the money, but they knew that by the time my daughter graduated, they would have to give it back. During the year that followed, my brother and I drifted apart. I was also so busy with work and personal problems that I did not reach out to him. And despite his earlier history, I don't think that he would have failed to give back the money. My brother was a man of honor, and his wife had a good head on her shoulders. Alas, almost a year after I borrowed my brother's money, there was no word about repaying me. I did not have too much stress about Jasmine's fees. She was one of the highest achievers at her school and got a partial scholarship. But the scholarship only covered 50% of the fees, and no accommodation or books were covered, so I would have to pay out of pocket. I did not even have half of the money needed. I had not told my wife what I've done, so she had gone all out of my daughter's prom and graduation party. I know, I should have told her something, but I could not handle her disappointment. Sydney is the kindest human being, but when it comes to her family, she's a lion. If I told her what happened with the money, then she would have me, my brother, Irene, on a platter. I called Jonah up with only a few weeks to go before my daughter had to go to college, and I told him the situation, and you'll not believe what he said. He said that since I've not asked, he thought it was a gift. When his life was on the line, he swore he would pay back the money on time. Was he now forgetting it since he's now healthy? I'd not really interacted with him for months, so I wasn't paying much attention. But then I did, and I noticed that he had the money. He just did not want to pay me back. When I went to his house, I noticed that instead of one, there were 2 cars parked in the garage. In his house, I could see new things that have not been there before. Well, my wife even commented on how expensive their tea set was. I was seriously not paying attention to it, by the way. I asked him how he could not have the money when he had all these pricey new items in a second car. He said he's gotten a promotion and asked if it was a crime to spoil himself. My wife was starting to notice that my conversation with him was getting a little bit heated, so I left it alone. On the drive home, I was furious as I felt as if I had dismissed the issue, as if it was nothing. My daughter's college fund was the reason that he was even standing there. It was not just a small thing. So, I called him again and told him that we needed to talk about what he needed to do to come up with the money. His wife, whom I did not know was listening, told me that no such thing was going to happen. She said that there was no contract to prove that the money had to be repaid, and there was nothing they could do to help me. And then she started saying that I was very stupid for not saying anything earlier because they had plans with the money. My brother just stood there, letting her say all this nonsense. I told him that if he did not give me my money back, then I was going to take him straight to court. But his wife said that I should stop harassing her husband and leave him alone. I lost my temper and started saying a lot of stuff, and then they dared to hang up the phone on me. I realized when no one was answering that they had hung up on me and was about to call them again when my wife said, "When were you going to tell me?" How long had she been watching me? Long enough to hear what happened, and she was absolutely furious. I could already see my life flashing before my eyes when she walked towards me with anger in her eyes and said, "Our daughter's looking forward to college. Fix this. And next time, do not keep something serious like this from me." That night, dinner felt like it was served of an ice tray. Not that it was not warm, but I could feel her glaring at me. I felt true shame, but was glad at the least that Jasmine was not home to see this. The next morning, she'd already left by the time I woke up. I was so stressed that I couldn't even concentrate. That was until she called me. I picked up the call as soon as my phone rang, and she told me to meet her at her favorite cafe. When I saw her, she just hands me the phone. It was a poster of my sister-in-law had posted for a party at our family cabin. I was absolutely full of rage. How could they do this? After basically stealing our money, they decide to throw a party? I asked her what we were going to do about it. She said that no party was going to happen as long as she was alive. She told me that she'd already spoken to the real estate agent that we were selling the cabin and banning him from the property completely. But we couldn't. Our father had said that it would be something for our family. But now the so-called family that I had has betrayed me. Now I have to take care of the one family that remained, my wife and daughter. The thought of telling Jasmine that she was not going to be able to go to school for at least another year was just too much for me. So my wife and I decided that the cabin has to be up for sale. We spoke to the real estate agent and had it on the market by the end of the day. And to show that I could be petty, I posted the listing everywhere and waited for him to have a problem with it because I knew he would. When he called, I would hear Irene in the background yapping away. I told him that unless he wanted to buy the cabin from me, then I had no business talking to him. He had made it clear that we owed each other nothing, and then I hung up on him. The next morning, I woke up to a threatening email from his lawyer, who I kindly informed that since I was older, the cabin's in my name. My father put it in my name, even though it belonged to both of us technically. And who did I have to think that it was in my name? My brother and his poor financial habits. And to think that I've been considering changing it so that both our names could be on it. Thank goodness. I dreaded paperwork. He sent his lawyer and his wife to fight his battles for him because he knew that he was a coward. I also knew that he would stoop very low to make sure that I did not sell the cabin. I did give him another option. That was the worst part. It's not like I wanted to sell the cabin. It held so many memories for me. But he forced me to because he put me in financial ruin. I felt terrible, even thinking that if I have not saved his life, then I wouldn't be in this mess. He even had the audacity to tell me that I was disrespecting our parents' memory. He was the one who started it when he betrayed me. He was acting like he cared about the cabin all of a sudden, but he didn't. I was the one who kept on going there year after year and forcing him to come along. I paid for the upkeep of the cabin and never asked him to contribute anything. If I did not maintain it, it would have become part of the forest surrounding it. If that did not prove that the cabin was rightfully mine, then I don't know what would have. Yet he wanted to talk about how our father would be appalled by the actions. I think my father would understand, actually, that I was backed into a corner by someone who I thought was my brother. After days of this lawyer trying to catch me out and stop me from selling, he, quote, admitted defeat, his words exactly. My wife relaxed and the thought that we won. She wanted to celebrate, but I told her not yet. That was his trick so that he and his wife could go to the cabin and try to destroy it. They poured gasoline around the cabin and were about to light it on fire when the police came and arrested him for trespassing. I've been certain that they might ignore the court order and go to the cabin to sabotage it. So I made extra precautions, installed security cameras. Not only that, but the security alarm went off when unauthorized people entered the property. Yeah, it was costly but worth it for the measures, for they fell into my trap, hook, line, and sinker. They were caught red-handed about to commit arson, and that's when I needed to put them in a position where I could get all that I wanted. I no longer wanted to save the cabin for our family. It held so much significance to the brother that I hated. So I told him that I was going to sell the cabin to replace the money that he stole. I also filed a charge against him and his wife for trying to set my cabin on fire. Finally, people saw them for the savages that they were. They lost many friends this way. My sister-in-law took it harder than anyone else. She made a big deal of uninviting us from her family events and changing the school her kids go to, since my 7-year-old goes to the same school. Not only that, but she did not let it go for weeks afterward. She would make posts telling people that the cabin was haunted or had rats. It was getting really embarrassing, honestly, and her husband did not save her from the embarrassment. He was suddenly so quiet for someone who was making a lot of noise earlier. Though my sister-in-law was working hard to stop the cabin from being successfully sold, my wife was working even harder and more diligent to get us a good buyer. Finally, we did it. It was such an easy and smooth transaction. Not only that, but because of the area where the cabin was situated, we were able to get above market price for it. I was happy, relieved. I should have told my wife what happened a long time ago. But then again, I feel like she would have had my brother and his wife for dinner. She says that even if they do come to their senses and apologize one day, she'll never forgive them. In fact, if they set foot on the doorstep, I will not stop her from throwing them out. I know my brother. He will sit on his high horse and not apologize as long as everything's going well for him. But once he's in just a little bit of trouble, he'll call. Only this time he'll find out that I've blocked him. Alright guys, this was a very interesting story. I think the worst part of it for me was the fact that OP went out of his way to try to save his brother's life. Literally hid it from his wife, did not tell her that he's giving away the money so that his brother can have the surgery, didn't say a word, kept it all under wraps just to make sure his brother had a fighting chance. And what does his brother do once he gets healthy again? Well, he stabs his brother in the back with that vile sister-in-law. The worst part of the story, though, I think, was the fact that the brother was actually so jealous and mad that he was going to set fire to the family cabin, a place that they shared memories for decades. Yeah, it sucks to have to sell it, but the reason OP was in this gigantic mess was because of his brother. Guys, I do have one specific question for you. Have you ever been in a situation like this? Maybe not exactly the same, but something to do with your brother, sister, sister-in-law, where it just turned into an absolute disaster. Drop your comments down below. Let's talk about it in the comment section, and we'll turn our attention to the final story of the video, with the title being this: Am I the a-hole for not wanting to adopt my dying ex-girlfriend's child? This is an emotional story, guys. I hope you're ready for that. If you're not, I don't blame you for clicking off. This is a sad story. Let's get into it. I'm 31 and male, and I met my ex-girlfriend, 29 female, on a dating app 7 years ago. She had a son who was 6 months at the time, and she was with multiple guys and just ended up getting pregnant. Still doesn't even know who the bio father is. But it wasn't that much of an issue since she seemed like a great person and we have a lot in common. After a few weeks of chatting and talking online, we went on our first date and had a great time. After that, we just started hanging out whenever she could, and shortly after, she introduced me to her son. A few months into the relationship, we've moved in together to save money. Since both of us were renting at the time, I started helping take care of her child whenever I could, and well, we really grew fond of each other. He even started calling me Papa, and we just slid along with it since my girlfriend didn't mind. Almost 5 years into our relationship, she told me that she wants to break up because I became boring, not an active person, like I used to be. Yeah, we used to go on hikes and travel around the country on weekends, and that I just worked too much. It was a rough time after that, and I had a hard time accepting it. Although, not as hard as having to explain to a 5-year-old that he'll no longer be seeing his papa. But I managed to get over it after a few months, found a better job that allowed me to work remotely, and had a lot of free time, so I managed to explore a few other countries. Well, a few days ago, I got a call from my ex. She said that she's sick in the hospital. They removed one of her breasts, but recently they found a tumor in her other breast, and they'll need to have it removed as well. She's scared that she might die if it doesn't work out, and asked me a big question. If I would be willing to become her son's legal guardian and adopt him, since she says that she has no one else to ask. I live a different lifestyle now, travel, I invest in myself. So I told her I can't do it. She told me that her son misses me and would love to see me just one more time. But I said no again, then she starts crying and calling me names before hanging up. I talked to my sister and my parents about this, and they told me that it's a ducked up thing to refuse it. After all those years spent with them, I feel like trash. Am I the a-hole for not wanting to adopt my, quote, dying ex-girlfriend's child? What's up, everybody? Mr. Reddito here. So this story does have an update. It's a rather sad story, but here's the update. After I made the original post, I've spent a bit of thinking. I've reached out to her friend, trying to get a little bit more info. She didn't want to say much and told me that I should come over. I ended up going. Ex and her friend were there, kiddo was at school. Honestly felt completely different than I was expecting to feel. Anyways, she had the other breast removed and quickly found out that it spread, and she was just starting with therapy. Ex suggested to stay until the kid returns, and I remember what you guys said, but I just couldn't do it. I stayed, because I just wanted to see. I guess some of you were right about him remembering me or not. He walks in, says hi, and disappears somewhere, I guess his room. Walks back after a minute and starts staring at me. Papa? Papa! And runs to me. Ex start crying out loud and I tear up, barely holding myself from crying. I don't know if it's because of her crying or because of the kiddo remembering. It was just great. To cut it short, I started visiting her 2 to 3 times a week, but sadly, things were starting to get worse. Seeing her getting weaker and weaker, I decided to go through with the guardianship. Hired a lawyer, did tons of paperwork, interviews, investigations, and finally found the bio dad. Ex narrowed a list of people, and even without the DNA test, you could just see from miles that the kid was a mini version of that guy. Both Ex's mom and bio dad signed the consent and waiver, But even if they did not, they probably wouldn't have had a chance to make a difference. After 2 months, the judge made his decision and I finally became a legal guardian. Sadly, my ex passed away roughly 3 months ago, after which I started the adoption process that still goes on. Had 2 court hearings so far and another one will be in 2 weeks. So far, things went well and well, I'm just hoping for the best. Alright, so for this one, I told you it was pretty sad, and it was. Let's read a couple comments about it. Young children are very adaptable, and I'm sure that he'll adapt to our lifestyle. You did a wonderful thing here. You should be proud of the kid and yourself. It's a very enriching lifestyle. It sounds great for a kid, honestly. Keep them curious and their minds active. Also, likely helps to distract him a bit of the horrible loss that he just had. I'm incredibly impressed with OP. This is a major commitment. But after being a dad to the kid for about 5 years anyways, yeah, I can see how this would feel right. I hope they have a happy life together, I truly do. That was a heartfelt message for a sad story, and I am happy that OP was able to get the kid. Let me know your thoughts about this story, guys. Drop your opinions down below. And also, you know how much I like similar situation comments, so if you've ever been through something like this, if you want to, go ahead and share your experience. We'll talk about it in the comments. Guys, have a wonderful day. I hope you are just killing it today. Whatever you think that you have to do, you go out there and you do it. I'll see you guys tomorrow, alright?